This is an execution. This was a planned murder. The killer came into this house looking for Justin and got Justin.
A brutal killing.
Justin Michael was brutally gunned down, and Angie Verhill was unharmed. It just didn't make sense.
A dark mystery with shocking twists.
The motives could be infidelity, jealousy. Is there some type of love triangle gone bad?
He was face to face with the guy that he could say, that's the guy that took my girlfriend away from me. And maybe it just kind of picked the scab. Maybe that's when his anger toward Justin Michael began to build.
The truth will be revealed.
Most victims know their killer. You're almost always gonna find a connection. There's some tie back to the victim. The key to the investigation is finding that tie.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Some 15 miles north of Des Moines, Iowa, just off the highway and down some gravel roads, lies the town of Grimes. Though if you blink, you just might miss it.
Grimes is a very small town, surrounded by nothing but farmland. You have the old brick downtown area, and then out for miles in every direction, you have farm fields.
Grimes is very quiet, has that Midwestern charm. It has low crime rate. The last violent crime was 42 years ago. Most of the crimes are property crimes, thefts, burglaries.
But then one spring night, the residents of this peaceful farming community are awoken by the sound of sirens.
911, what's your emergency?
Somebody just came in and shot my fiance in the head.
Can you go over and check the status of...
He's dead.
Okay.
I know he is.
So there's no signs of life at all?
No.
When you get a shots fired trip, especially in the Grimes area, a lot of the times it's just people doing fireworks. You get backfire from a car. We've had transformers blow. Homicide, very rarely.
When you see a lot of authorities on the scene in Grimes, Iowa, you start thinking, this probably isn't just a normal crime, it's a lot more serious.
The victim is 30-year-old Justin Michael.
Justin was a good-looking, bright young man. Family and friends loved to be around him. He had a sense of adventure, a great job.
Nobody had an unkind word to say about him. He was always willing to lend a hand. Just a good guy.
Angie and Justin were engaged to be married. Angie had bought her wedding dress, so it's heartbreaking to know they were that close to the wedding and then their lives were shattered.
Tasked with investigating Justin Michael's murder is Detective Robin Bartholomew.
I was called out roughly 3:30 in the morning and was notified of a shooting. Once on scene, I observed a white male, early 30s, laying on his back in the bed. There was a significant amount of blood. He had 4 gunshot wounds, 3 to the head and 1 to the neck. The victim appeared to be gunned down in his sleep.
The person that shot Justin was clearly standing right over the top of him, shooting almost downward into his head. The bullets passed through Justin, through the pillow, through his mattress, and one of the bullets actually passed through the wall and exited the home.
Justin Michael's fiancée, Angie Verhill, was laying right next to Justin Michael when he was shot. And Angie Verhill was unharmed. Angie said she was asleep in bed. She heard several shots and immediately woke and saw what appeared to be a dark figure exiting the bedroom. The description of the intruder was so vague. Average size person, unknown male or female, dressed in all dark clothing. We have no idea who we're looking for.
Detective Bartholomew must now track down Justin's killer by focusing on the last 24 hours of his life, starting with the crime scene.
Shell casings were located in the bed next to the victim. I'd never seen the shell casings before. They were Tula ammo, which I later learned is a Russian manufactured steel casing ammo. The weapon used was a 9mm automatic.
Whenever you have a murder involving a firearm, ballistics is a very important forensic component of an investigation. Whenever you see a particular brand of ammunition show up that is atypical, that points police in the direction of a specific type of buyer. That said, the more rare a brand or a make or model of ammunition, the much smaller your potential pool of suspects, and they can be much harder to find.
Police combed through the house, looking for more clues.
It was a small, well-kept house. There was no signs of forced entry. The only thing that appeared out of order was some electronic equipment that had been pulled from an entertainment center.
Then, something unusual catches the detective's eye.
There was a piece of clothing that was left there in the living room that did not belong to anyone in the house. It was a construction yellow hoodie. I thought that was odd. In the preliminary stages of an investigation, you can't rule out a burglary gone wrong. But after examining the scene, nothing was missing from the house. The house wasn't ransacked. To me, it was a poor attempt to stage a burglary.
Staging is any attempt by an offender to create an alternate scenario, to move things around in a way to misdirect the police. Whenever you see staging at a murder scene, or any crime scene for that matter, it will often reflect the fact that the offender knows they're going to be the prime suspect. They have some personal connection to the victim. So by introducing staging, or countermeasures as we call it, it creates an alternate scenario to frame someone in particular.
It did not seem it was some type of a burglary that was taking place. It appeared that this was a targeted attack. This was somebody that came into this house looking for Justin and got Justin.
It's very unusual that someone's gonna enter a house, gun down one person, and leave witnesses.
In many cases, leaving a witness behind would have to have some other pragmatic purpose. In other cases, we see that where an offender will murder one victim because they have a very specific motive. That doesn't necessarily mean they have it in them to take the life of an innocent bystander or a witness. In reality, some killers just aren't that cold-blooded.
To get more answers, the investigators turned to the other witness at the scene, Justin's mother, Marie.
Marie Michael was in town for wedding planning purposes, so she was actually staying at the residence with Justin and Angie.
Marie was in a guest room across from Justin and Angie's room. At approximately 3:20 in the morning, she was awoken by the door opening.
Marie Michael told us the gun that was used had a laser sight on it, and she was woken up by the light shining in her eyes. She obviously was very scared, pretended to remain asleep. At one point, she took a peek, and she sees a figure in the doorway clad in all black, you know, nothing to indicate who it was. In very short order then, she heard 4 rapid gunshots.
911 calls came in by Angie Verheul and Marie Michaels at 3:22 in the morning. We were able to establish that the homicide occurred at approximately 3:20 in the morning.
But who would want to kill Justin Michael, and why?
Justin Michael was brutally gunned down, and Angie Verhill was unharmed. It just didn't make sense. It was something that was suspicious.
Angie said as soon as the shots happened, she immediately jumped up out of the bed. The fact that, she didn't get blood on her, maybe from the way the gunshots occurred, all of the splatter went opposite of where Angie was lying. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but that's incredibly unusual.
At this point, I think we need to look at what was the cause of this. Was it a coincidence? We wanted to look at Angie Verhill a little bit closer.
When one learns that Angie was sleeping right beside Justin when he was shot and there was no blood on her, she wasn't harmed, one has to think, was she in on it? How could she possibly be uninjured or unscathed as a result of this brutal attack?
When you examine crime scenes, and especially when you have blood evidence, it tells a story. And with the lack of blood on Angie Verhill, to me, that was a red flag. In these types of cases, you really want to look at the person closest to the victim. More times than not, it's going to be a significant other or a family member that is involved in the homicide. I want to take a closer look at Angie.
With suspicion swirling around Angie Verhuel in the brutal killing of her fiancé Justin Michael, detectives bring her down to the station for questioning.
Angie, by virtue of being Justin's fiancé and being at the crime scene unharmed, is a person of interest.
As detectives interview Angie, she's surprisingly unemotional.
Do you have any suspects on who you think would have shot Justin?
I have no idea.
One would think that you'd be completely shattered that your fiancé was brutally gunned down right next to you. Angie was very calm. She wasn't upset. She wasn't crying. Her demeanor was a little suspicious.
Is there anybody in Justin's life that harbors any ill toward him?
Not that I know of.
Everyone responds differently to grief and to stress. So in order to calibrate a person's response and determine if it's suspicious or not, like we see in this case, we would have to first get to know every person of interest, their background, their habits, their associates, to understand if a theatrical response is out of character or if that's actually how they just operate day to day.
You're the closest to him.
Right.
So you've got to know something.
This was a planned murder. Angie survived this shooting. She's laying right next to Justin when it occurs. So why is she still alive? What's the motivation behind this murder?
Detectives question Angie about how she and Justin spent his last 24 hours.
The day before Justin Michael was murdered, they met for dinner at Justin Michael's sister's house. Angie said there was nothing unusual. Everything was normal. They were busy making preparations for the wedding, planning. They were happy, and they got home about 10 p.m. and went to bed approximately 11 p.m.
Detectives press Angie for more details about Justin's life.
Trying to figure out why something like this happens, you start looking at backgrounds, you start looking at all of the people that Justin knows.
Has he had any issues with anyone? No enemies?
Not that I know of.
Did you party a little bit? No drugs involvement whatsoever. Did Justin ever sell drugs?
Not that I know of.
There was no indication that Justin was involved in drugs. There was no indication that Justin was involved in gambling or any of the things of that nature.
You always want to look into, was there something in Justin's background that was the cause of this homicide? There was really nothing. And also, there was nothing noteworthy in Justin Michael's past relationships that would indicate somebody wanting to harm him.
We will do everything in our power to discover where the truth lies, nothing but the truth. And whoever's responsible for this, we need to make sure they're held accountable.
Investigators look closer at Angie's relationship with Justin Michael. They want to know if there were problems between them.
Angie had met Justin in 2013. They hit it off so well. She'd moved in very quickly. She described their relationship as a great relationship. There was no stress, fights, no issues. They were both excited to get married. Angie said that their relationship was solid.
People generally don't kill people just for the sake of killing people unless they are completely deranged. Most victims know their killer. You're almost always going to find a connection. There's some tie back to the victim. The key to the investigation is finding that tie.
With Angie still in their crosshairs, investigators dig deeper into her past relationships.
During the course of Angie Verheule's interview, one of those things asked about is, who are your ex-boyfriends? Who are the people that you've been involved with that could be responsible for this? The first name she mentioned was a guy by the name of Andy Wegner.
How long did you date Andy?
About 3 years.
Andy Wagner was a funeral director here in town. He was Angie's ex-boyfriend. It was a long-term relationship, and they were pretty serious and lived together, and eventually they broke up.
How did Andy take the breakup?
He was like, well, I feel like we're getting along really well, and it's hard for me to believe we're making the right decision. And he was like, I'm taking this a little harder than I thought I would.
At that point, Andy's a person of interest. He's somebody that is got a history with Angie, so we need to know what he's been up to, and we've got to figure out where he was, what he was doing, and see if he has any motivation to be involved in this.
When pressed on who else might have wanted to harm Justin, Angie recalls a strange incident from a few months back.
Angie had talked about an incident involving her vehicle where it was vandalized. The windshield was cracked, 3 windows were broke out, and someone had keyed her car. At the time, it was thought that kids in the neighborhood had damaged her vehicle. But after learning the amount of damage to Angie's car, it seemed very personal. The vandalized vehicle and the murder of Justin Michael could be related.
Detectives ask Angie if she has any ideas as to who might be behind the vandalism.
There was one guy that I had dated in between Andy and Justin.
She mentions that for a very brief period of time, she dated this guy named Dave.
It was not a full-on relationship.
Angie talked about meeting up with him 6 times, but nothing serious. It was just more of a hookup.
According to Angie, when she ended things with Dave, he didn't take it well and sent her several angry texts.
So at that point, Dave is on our radar, but we still don't know who Dave is.
What's his Dave?
What is his last name now? I just forgot.
For a period of time, she could not remember Dave's last name.
Dave. God, I don't know why I can't think of it right now.
I thought that was odd. We were trying to ask more details or something that would help her remember Dave's last name. As we pressed forward, out of the blue, she comes up with
Moffett.
Moffett, M-O-F-F-I-T-T?
I can't remember if it's 2 T's or just 1.
We already had Andy Wegner's name, so we're running a criminal history check. We're doing those things with Andy Wegner, but now Dave Moffett is somebody that we need to see what's going on. And then Angie said David and Justin had worked together at Wells Fargo.
And what's even weirder is that he ended up working in Justin's department.
Wells Fargo is a huge company. I mean, 10,000+ employees in Polk County. And by pure happenstance, David Moffett then gets assigned to the very team within the mortgage division where Justin Michael worked. And both of these guys, Justin and David, had dated Angie Verheule. So he was face to face with the guy that he could say, that's the guy that took my girlfriend away from me. Maybe it just kind of picked the scab. Maybe that's when his anger toward Justin Michael began to build.
Love triangles can be dangerous. They involve intense emotions, they involve jealousy, and potentially rage. And so I think any time where you hear that there's a love triangle, it raises the question, is there some sort of emotion or hostility here that's potentially leading to violence?
This connection is most interesting. Knowing that Angie had a relationship with David Moffett, David Moffett has a work relationship with Justin Michael. Is there some type of love triangle gone bad? Jealousy, in my mind, could be the motive here. Jealousy is one of the most destructive emotions. We need to find David Moffett and Angie's ex-boyfriend, Andy Wagner. We need to talk to these guys.
We had to determine if they were involved in the murder of Angie's fiancé.
In the murder of Justin Michael, detectives are pursuing two new leads from his fiancée Angie's past.
Knowing that Angie had a relationship with David Moffett and Andy Wagner is Angie's long-term ex-boyfriend. We want to dig a little deeper and find out everything we can about them. We're checking if David Moffett has a criminal history. Does he have a weapons permit? While checking on David Moffett, we learned that David Moffett's vehicle was impounded the same night as the homicide. I needed to find out why.
They discovered David Moffett had an accident the night of the homicide, approximately 5 miles from Justin Michael's home.
At 3:45, shortly after the homicide, within the same hour, David Moffett's in an accident.
Having David Moffett's name pop up at that time in that location is not something we expected to see.
This is the piece of the puzzle we're looking for.
I was dispatched to that car accident. When I arrived on scene, it was about 0400, about approximately 40 minutes after the homicide took place. On a gravel road, I come up on the red Ford Taurus. It struck this telephone pole. The front end of the car was smashed in. When I give the plate to dispatch and they advise me it belongs to a guy named David Moffett, I don't see anybody in the area. And as soon as I'm starting to get back into my car is when the white male subject comes out of the ditch from the north. And he says, I need help. He said his name was David Moffett. He just said he was out for a joyride and he got in a car accident.
Deputy Tart was aware at this time that 5 miles away, we have an active homicide scene going on. So while not immediately apparent that these two things could be related, it certainly got his suspicion up.
The first thing I noticed is just how much sweat that he's covered in. He's from head to toe covered in sweat. I asked him what he's doing in the Grimes area. At that moment, he became really defensive. I couldn't find insurance on the car, so I made the decision that I was just gonna impound the car. My gut was telling me that he knew more about what was actually happening, about the homicide. So I got all the information that we needed in case we needed to come back and talk to him, which I felt at some point we were probably going to.
David Moffett lives on the other side of the county. He lives 26, 27 miles away from this area. So barring some unusual circumstance, there's really not much reason for him to be over in that area at 4 o'clock in the morning.
This startling new information that places David Moffett both on the timeline and near the crime scene could be the break investigators have been looking for.
Knowing that Angie dated David Moffett and David Moffett's vehicle was impounded the same night of the homicide, is that coincidence? Maybe, maybe not.
There's just too many coincidences that start to stack up in this case. He works with the victim. He's in a motor vehicle collision near the scene of the crime. That creates a nexus that is undeniable and that merits investigation full bore.
So Dave goes from being an interesting character that we need to find out about to the top of our list in very short order.
Detectives head to the scene of David Moffett's car accident hoping to find evidence that will connect him to Justin's homicide.
We have a lead. We can't get out there fast enough. Searching the area where David Moffett crashed, we found some incredible items. We found a shoebox that contained ear protection, a flashlight, and camo makeup.
So a lot of things that are associated with concealing your identity and committing a crime such as this murder.
As detectives continue to comb through the area, they gather even more crucial evidence.
We also find a gun magazine with ammo. It's Tula ammo. It's a match to the shell casings found at the crime scene. This is a big breakthrough.
But then, detectives make an unexpected discovery.
Along with the magazine, ammo, flashlight was a receipt for an oil change in the name of Andy Wagner.
What in the world is going on here? Andrew Wagner's already on our radar because, he's Angie's ex-boyfriend. We have to figure out how in the world this receipt ends up at the crash scene, where David Moffett's crashed his car.
It just didn't make sense. Did Andy Wagner kill Justin Michael? Did David Moffett kill Justin Michael? Were they in it together?
We've certainly seen collusion in homicide scenes, but, by all accounts, other than the Angie factor that they had both dated her, there's no reason that David Moffett and Andrew Wagner would have crossed paths. We've got to figure out what the connection is between these two.
The discovery of Andrew Wagner's name on a receipt at the scene of David Moffett's car accident, 5 miles from where Justin Michael was killed, has turned the investigation on its head.
These two are tied to this crime scene. Are these two guys working together? Are they working with Angie? I need to do some digging.
While detectives wait on a search warrant for David Moffett's house, they bring Andy Wagner in for questioning.
Andy Wagner and Angie Verheul lived together for 3 years.
When we interviewed Andrew Wagner, he had moved on, he had a new girlfriend.
Andy Wagner said that he was aware that Angie was engaged but did not know to who she was engaged to. We asked Andy Wagner if he knew David Moffett. He did not.
Andy claimed that after their breakup, he didn't stay in contact with Angie.
During interviews, it's very common that people minimize and don't tell the truth.
Andy denies having any involvement in the crime, but detectives press on, looking for answers.
When Andy was asked about a receipt for an oil change in his name, he didn't really have an explanation to why or what had happened to it. He said he recalled getting an oil change and thought that the receipt was still in his vehicle or at home.
When people are interviewed, there's many reasons why they may be evasive. Sometimes they're trying to conceal information which isn't connected to the crime, but maybe portrays them in a negative light. Sometimes they're taken aback and they're confused by the information that they're being presented with, not because they're guilty, but just because that's their way of responding when they're in a stressful situation.
Detectives question Andy about his whereabouts during the time Justin was killed.
Andy had talked about leaving work about 4 p.m. He went home, took care of a couple things, and then ultimately ended up staying overnight at his girlfriend's house.
She lives in another community several miles away. They had gone to dinner that night, and they hung out at home, watched some TV, and went to bed.
With Andy saying he's at his girlfriend's at 9 p.m. and Justin killed at 3:20 a.m., it's still possible that Andy had opportunity to sneak away from his girlfriend's place and kill Justin.
We need to establish that he was, in fact, at his girlfriend's house. But at this point, Andy Wagner is still high on our list as far as suspects.
In any circumstance where you have two mutually strong suspects, this creates a real dilemma for investigators because at some point you need to begin excluding one of them. So when you have two who can't be excluded, you can't move forward until one or the other is eliminated.
As detectives are wrapping up their interview with Andy Wagner, they receive the search warrant for David Moffett's home.
David still lived at home with his parents. He came from a pretty well-to-do family.
We were able to conduct a search at the Moffett residence. No one was home. Anytime you conduct a search, you're gonna look for any kind of evidence that's related to the crime. We're gonna look for weapons, we're gonna look for ammunition, anything that could lead us back to that homicide.
Detectives quickly uncover an important new piece of evidence.
In the basement, we found a bill of sale for a firearm, specifically a 9mm automatic firearm, like the one that is involved in the homicide.
Interestingly, though, on that bill of sale for that 9mm gun, the seller was a gentleman by the name of Drew Ballman, and the purchaser on that bill of sale was Andy Wegner. Why does Andy Wegner's name keep popping up in this case? We got this receipt that we can't really, get a good answer on that's found at the crash site for the oil change. Now we have this bill of sale for a 9mm gun found in David Moffett's basement.
Investigators find Drew Ballman's address on the bill of sale for the gun, and they set off to pay him a visit in the nearby town of Sigourney.
Drew Ballman's the guy that's going to solve this mystery for us. He's going to tell us who he saw when he sold a gun, if Andy Wegner went down and bought that gun, or if David Moffett went down and bought that gun.
We met with Drew Ballman, and he had no criminal history. He lived in a small town, was a school teacher. Drew, he was legitimately concerned, very upset, knowing that a weapon that he had sold was involved in a homicide. He was very cooperative.
He was a meticulous record keeper, which was of great value to us. As part of the sale of the weapon, he prepared 2 copies of the bill of sale. So we found the one copy in David Moffett's garbage can. He had an identical copy of that same bill of sale signed by both him and Andy Wegner. The other thing that Drew Ballman gave us, in addition to being a meticulous note taker, he's an avid target shooter. And fortunately for us, he actually had casings that he had fired through the 9mm gun that we believed to be the murder weapon. So we were able to match the bullets from the crime scene where Justin Michael was killed to the bullets that were provided to us by Drew Ballman. Now we know that we have our murder weapon that was sold by Drew Ballman.
Police are one step closer to uncovering the identity of Justin Michael's killer.
We showed Drew a picture of Andy Wegner, and we also showed him a photo lineup with a picture of David Moffett.
David Moffett and Andrew Wegner look very, very similar. Drew Ballman pointed at the first lineup and identified David Moffett, but he also pointed to Andy Wegner.
Drew wasn't 100% sure who he had met with.
Witnesses are really a double-edged sword for any investigator. You rely on witnesses to move an investigation forward, to prioritize certain suspects, to establish a timeline, but at the same time, eyewitness evidence is notoriously unreliable.
With Drew Ballman having ID'd both David and Andy as the purchaser of the gun used to kill Justin Michael, his fiancée Angie is ruled out as a suspect. But even with this promising new lead, the investigation is at a crossroads.
And this case was odd because we couldn't connect the dots. Whoever was committing this crime had the intention of throwing us off base. We don't usually have that, where it's false leads, for lack of a better term.
We're not sure what's going on here, but we're gonna find out who did this.
In the murder of Justin Michael, detectives have 2 suspects on their radar, Andy Wegner and David Moffett. They need to identify which one is the killer. In the nearby town of Sigourney, they have one more piece of evidence to look into. It could be the key to solving the case.
One of the requirements that Drew Ballman had for selling this gun was to make sure that the sale took place in a public place, so it would be recorded should anything go wrong.
One of the receipts that we found at David Moffett's residence was a receipt dated May 4th from a convenience store out of Sigourney, Iowa. A lemonade was purchased along with a candy bar on May 4th at 6:13 hours. So that is the same date and time that Drew Ballman sold the weapon.
Fortunately for us, the inside of that store had a surveillance camera.
Detectives turned to the surveillance cameras in the hopes of spotting David Moffett or Andy Wagner. After scouring hundreds of hours of footage, they find the missing piece of the puzzle.
We were able to positively identify this person as David Moffett. At that point, we knew that David Moffett was the person who purchased the weapon.
The critical value of CCTV or video evidence is that it is an impartial witness. It can provide a historic record of a timeline that is unassailable, that is undisputable, unlike eyewitness testimony that is subject to a lot of problems.
Detectives now know that David Moffett acted alone and was posing as Andy Wagner to buy the gun that killed Justin Michael. They believe he's the killer, but to prove it, they'll need more evidence tying him to the crime.
A second search was conducted at the Moffett residence.
We found there was tool ammo, which was consistent with both the tool ammo found at the primary crime scene, as well as the ammunition provided us by Drew Ballman.
In the bathroom trash, we'd found recon notes that were specifically for Justin Michael's neighborhood. Notes that would indicate certain times that neighbors were home, what time lights came off, things that would put David Moffett there watching at Justin Michael's house. Those notes indicated that David Moffett had put some planning into this.
Then, police come across a possible attempt to conceal evidence.
We'd found a tote in the basement that was not there the previous day. And inside that tote was a laptop computer.
And the red tub also contained about 2 inches of water in the bottom of it. It appeared that it was an attempt to eliminate whatever information was on the computer. Fortunately, our lab gurus were able to get this laptop dried out and in a functioning state. We found a substantial amount of evidence that specifically tied David Moffett to the execution of this crime. The first file that was found on the computer was a forged driver's license that had David Moffett's picture on it, but the license was created in the name of Andy Wagner.
The evidence suggested that David Moffett put a lot of planning into this. And this was all an elaborate ploy to frame Andy Wagner.
So at that point, once we find this computer, it all makes sense. Then Andy Wagner is pretty much exonerated in this case.
One may want to frame someone else, say Andy, for the murder so he won't get caught, and perhaps he wants to get rid of all the competition so that he's either the last person standing for Angie's affections, or he wants to send a message to Angie and everybody that she's been involved with.
Detectives then uncover even more revealing evidence connecting David Moffett to the crime.
Once David's laptop was examined, we were able to look at all the internet web searches that he had made.
You could see during the forensic analysis kind of the beginnings of a search history of David Moffett searching Angie Verheuel, David Moffett, typing in the name Justin Michael, things like that. And then days prior to the homicide, the search history ratcheting up in a sense.
We learned that David Moffett had searched how to commit a murder, what are the confession times at a local Catholic church, and the craziest one was the murderinest murder guide you'll ever need.
The internet searches revealed that David Moffett was trying to get away with murder.
What stands out for me is the clear level of planning and forethought that was invested into committing this crime. This was not a crime of rage. The level of planning and plotting that this takes shows that there's a level of instrumentality here in this offense.
With the evidence now stacked against him, David Moffett is arrested for the murder of Justin Michael.
So when we arrested David Moffett had a blank stare No reaction whatsoever. It was like he'd been caught. Looking over this case, jealousy in my mind is the motive here, and David Moffett was violently jealous.
Detectives are now able to piece together Justin Michael's final 24 hours.
The night Justin Michael was murdered, they had all got home about 10 p.m. and went to bed approximately 11 p.m.
Just after 3 a.m., David Moffett entered Justin Michael's house with murder on his mind.
On the night Justin was killed, the perpetrator was able to make entry through the back deck door. We then believe he went to the front of the house and staged that area to make it look as though it was some type of a burglary that was taking place. But this was not a burglary. This was a targeted attack. David Moffett then came down the hallway, entered the wrong bedroom where Marie Michael was staying. At that point, he realized that that was not the person that he was going after. Moffett then goes across the hall to the master bedroom where Angie and Justin were. Justin's laying in the bed, Angie's laying in the bed, and there's 4 shots that go into Justin. The bullets pass through Justin, through the pillow, through his mattress, and one of the bullets actually passed through the wall and exited the home. The killer was certainly looking for Justin, and the killer got Justin. We believe ultimately the gun had been thrown off a bridge into a lake.
David Moffett's car crash was his fatal error. Looking back now, if he would have never crashed, he might have gotten away with murder.
In July 2015, David Moffett is found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
It was absolutely tragic. Justin certainly didn't deserve this. That's what makes this hard. You know, you can't reconcile things like that in your head and have it make any kind of sense. The only reconciliation you get in a case like this is getting a conviction and holding the person responsible.
I really feel for Justin's mother. As a mother myself, I can't imagine losing a child. And so your heart just breaks for her when she's talking about being there the night her son's murdered and, seeing the crime scene is just horrific for any mother. You don't expect to outlive your children ever.
We may never know why David Moffett killed Justin Michael. Was it in hopes that he would get back with Angie, he would get a second chance, or he was just pure evil?
There was a beautiful woman who was a mother who was taken from her kid by a monster.
A horrific shooting.
It was such a violent act. Shooting 8 times into another human being.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
In this case, we have a very manipulative, overpowering, and influential predator.
It's a true crime of passion. If I can't have you, nobody can. Pow, pow.
Maybe this is kind of a conspiracy to cover up the homicide.
The truth will be revealed.
Stories upon stories, they were all fiction. He was the one that wanted her dead.
Could he have shot her? Absolutely.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Pinellas Park, a small city just outside of Tampa, Florida, known for its easy proximity to beautiful beaches and lush greenery.
You have your wealthy elite, you have your folks that are just getting by. Florida in general is a very transient state, but most of these people were here for generations. I don't think Pinellas Park sees the type of crime that we see in Tampa.
It's a fairly peaceful community. I would say the most common type of criminal activity in Pinellas Park is drunk driving, then your occasional car break-ins. It's certainly not the murder capital of the world or anything like that.
It's the day after the 4th of July, a Saturday night, and neighbors report hearing firecrackers just after 11 o'clock.
It's a weekend. So 4th of July weekend, you're gonna hear fireworks and stuff going off for like 2 or 3 days.
The sound doesn't draw much attention until one resident discovers the pops are not celebratory.
Troy indicated that he had heard what he believed to be firecrackers. When he went outside to see what it was, he noticed the garage door was up, and he saw his girlfriend, Sandy, bleeding profusely inside her car.
First responders arrive on the scene, followed quickly by lead detectives Harry Agello and Paul Andrews of the Pinellas Police Department.
They realized it was something severe, so I was notified and responded to the scene.
The car was sitting in the garage. The body, Sandy, is in the car, and there's a large amount of blood and broken glass all over the place.
She suffered 8 separate gunshot wounds to various parts of her body, starting with her head, her torso, and the bottom of one of her feet. And initially, just looking at the shell casings, it looked to me like they were what they turned out to be, which was a .22 caliber weapon. It appeared to us that she had just been ambushed, that someone had waited or followed her to her garage before the shooting occurred.
The victim is 37-year-old Sandy Roso. She's rushed to the hospital but dies on arrival, and the case is officially declared a homicide.
In this particular case, it was such a horrendous act. You know, shooting someone 8 times, that is overkill.
Gunshot wounds can tell a certain story by their placement and by their number. So the victim being shot 8 times, we see that rage, that lack of impulse control seeping through. That suggests that this isn't, for instance, a professional hit. Someone has a pretty specific reason why they've targeted her.
But who would want to kill Sandy, a loving mother and former model who worked hard as a bartender to make a better life for her and her daughter?
Sandy was a very devoted mother to her own daughter, Giovanna. She was always very friendly with people, very vivacious, outgoing personality. Everybody that knew her liked her. What made this shocking was the fact that a young lady was ambushed in her garage for no apparent reason at the time, just coming home from work.
Detectives must now solve Sandy's murder by focusing on the last 24 hours of her life, starting with the crime scene.
Her purse was intact, her wallet was there. No items were found to be missing.
This was not a random act of violence. This was not a robbery. You don't shoot somebody 7 or 8 times to rob them. You shoot somebody 7 or 8 times to make a point. This was personal.
The detective's top priority is to speak with Sandy's live-in boyfriend, Troy.
Well, oftentimes when someone is a victim of a homicide, it's someone very close to them or who knows them that's the suspect.
Troy must know something. He knows this woman intimately.
But when police first try to talk to Troy, he's nowhere to be found.
We were told that he'd left the scene. The patrol officers on scene thought it was unusual that Troy had left.
We find out he went right to the hospital. But that raised a red flag with people because he wanted to lock the house up before he left. Well, that's a little odd. You've got a crime scene. You've got all these police here. This is the safest address in Pinellas County when you've got 15 cops here. What do you need to lock your house up for?
Troy's just focused on locking up the house. Why? What does he want to prevent people from going in to find? But at the same time, it could be a response of someone who is confused, is probably scared to death, and what do? We batten down the hatches. Either way, that immediately is suspicious and needs digging into more deeply.
Detectives have Troy come down to the station for questioning.
He was a mess, as you would expect him to be. He said that he last saw her as she left for work that same day. They worked two different schedules. He worked days, she worked nights.
Troy tells detectives that the morning of July 5th, he went to work at 5 a.m. and Sandy was still asleep. By the time he got home at 2 p.m., Sandy was just leaving for her job at the popular Tampa bar, the Green Iguana.
On the 5th, she was supposed to get off at around 11 o'clock that night.
Troy indicated that he heard her car driving in, and then shortly after 11 o'clock, around 11:10 or so, he had heard what he believed to be firecrackers. Well, we assumed that was the gunshots. So we were able to determine about the time that the shooting would have occurred.
So Troy walks out into the garage to make sure she's okay, and when he walks up to the car, he sees her. She's got a lot of blood, and she's not responsive.
He thought that maybe she was alive. He tried to revive her.
That's when he picks up the phone and dials 911.
He was doing everything right that a victim or a witness does. But he was our suspect. He was our #1 suspect. Troy is still the first guy there at the scene, and he knows her way better than any of us do. So, we really need to focus on him and find out if he's the shooter.
Police then asked Troy about his relationship with Sandy.
He described a relationship as a romantic one. He was in love with this woman. Troy is telling us she's beautiful. She's got a daughter who's absolutely wonderful. He adored her daughter.
Troy was very happy with the relationship he had with her. He believed that they were going to get married. They just hadn't set a date sometime in the future.
I asked him, why would somebody kill Sandy? Is she involved in something else? And he says that, yeah. She said that anything ever happened to her, you need to go find Tracy Humphreys.
According to Troy, Tracy Humphrey is a dangerous ex-boyfriend of Sandy's, who assaulted and raped her after she broke it off.
Troy is concerned that Tracy Humphrey was involved in the case, but couldn't find anything in our criminal justice databases to back that up.
We had nothing. There's no Tracy Humphreys, which obviously raises a flag.
The offerance, as we see of a ready-made suspect, a turnkey suspect, as I say, in the case of Tracy. It could be to create that distractionary suspect, to have the police go down that rabbit hole, and in the meantime, buy yourself time and space and options.
As police interview Troy, something unusual catches their eye.
He had some cuts on his hand, on his shins, on his feet as well. He said it was probably from the broken glass, from when he reached inside the car to try and pull her up to see what was wrong. So you start looking at Troy again, like, well, is this guy lying to us? While we're off running on a wild goose chase, our real bad guy could be, getting rid of the evidence. This Tracy Humphreys could be our main guy, but we're not going to lose sight of Troy.
In the murder of Sandy Roso, detectives reach out to friends and family, hoping they can fill in the gaps of her final hours alive.
It's always difficult to talk to a loved one after someone that they love so much was taken from them. They can't understand how anyone could do such a violent act, shooting 8 times into another human being. Sandy's mom was devastated. She was crushed. She described Sandy as happy-go-lucky, fun, friends with everyone. We assured Sandy's mom that we're going to seek justice. We're going to try to find the person that did this and bring them to justice.
Investigators asked Sandy's mom about Sandy's relationship with the father of her daughter.
Her daughter at that point was living with her father in Alabama. There were indications that there were some contentious issues in their relationship related to maybe the child custody issue.
Jesse, the father of the child, currently was supporting the child, and he might want sole custody. He might want to be the only parent involved in the child's life. So he might be a potential suspect.
Lots of murders are committed over child custody. Emotions run high when children are involved.
We're going to do everything we can to find out if he was involved or not. So another detective and I drove up to Alabama to meet with him.
Jesse, when the detectives talked to him, there was a level of arrogance. Why are the cops here? Why it couldn't have been him?
Detectives take Jesse down to the local police station for questioning.
He said he would never do something like that. He said Sandy had a large part in her daughter's life, taking her on vacations, flying up there to visit her as often as she could.
Investigators look into Jesse's whereabouts on the night of July 5th, when Sandy was killed.
He said that night he was at home watching movies with his daughter and his girlfriend.
And at about 1 o'clock in the morning, he got a phone call. And that phone call informed him that Sandra had been shot and Sandra was dead.
To confirm his story, investigators need more information from Jesse.
We got DNA from him, fingerprints from him, and of course, phone information. You know, someone uses a cell phone, you can find out a lot about that person, more specifically where they're at. And at the time of the killing, around midnight, Jesse's phone records showed that he was outside the state of Florida at the time, which would have made it impossible for him to have been in Pinellas Park or anywhere near Pinellas Park at the time of the crime.
Detectives clear the father of Sandy's daughter as a suspect. Looking for new leads, they shift their focus to the Green Iguana, where Sandy was working the night she was gunned down.
The Green Iguana was a very busy, lively nightlife kind of place, more of a tourist crowd, tiki hut style bar. Sandy was successful in the job that she did. She interacted with people all the time. We actually went as far as to interview all of her coworkers, especially ones that worked with her that night. The folks she worked with were shocked, angry. Everybody that knew her liked her. So they were very upset that this had happened to her.
Detectives don't find anything suspicious about any of Sandy's colleagues, and they help fill in her timeline.
No one noticed anything unusual inside the bar that evening. And she had checked out of work at about 11:15.
We had somebody there that saw her leave when she drove out of the parking lot. To get her timeline down, we backed it up to where the time clock was, where she clocked out at about 10:45. And then we drove that route to the house. It was roughly 26, 27 minutes of a drive. So she would have arrived home right about 11:10, give or take a minute. That means that when she clocked out of work, she would have had to have gone to her car and driven home without any stop before she was murdered.
Having narrowed down the timeline of when Sandy was last seen at 10:45 p.m., investigators questioned Sandy's coworkers about her personal life.
Earlier, Troy told us that he was in a solid relationship with Sandy and everything was just fine. But her colleagues had told a different story.
She sometimes felt she was a roommate. Sometimes she would describe Troy as a boyfriend. It appeared to us in talking to everybody that she had a guy that liked her, that she felt comfortable with, but that it wasn't a long-term relationship for her, that she would eventually be either moving out or moving on.
You start looking at Troy again, like, well, he's telling us one story, but her friends are all telling us something else.
Once you start lying to investigators, the investigators are going to lay hard on that person and start to look at everything they've said.
The colleagues at the Green Iguana said that she was, I guess, fixing to have a conversation with him about maybe starting to see other people.
We know that threatened separation is a trigger in domestic homicides in a good portion of cases. And so, you know, whether it's separation, jealousy, or perhaps a combination of both could have escalated this situation.
It's possible that his feelings are hurt. Could that make Troy go off the deep end? Could he have shot her? Maybe. It's possible.
Detectives are looking closer at Sandy's boyfriend, Troy, as the prime suspect in her murder.
Sandy had indicated to people at the Green Iguana, where she worked, that she loved Troy, and she was very thankful that he provided stability, but probably wasn't in love with Troy like Troy would have liked.
He's either A, completely in the dark, or B, caught on about it, and maybe that could be a motive to kill her. True crime of passion. If I can't have you, nobody can. Pow, pow.
Detectives question Troy again about Sandy's murder.
He's very distraught over this, but he's cooperating. Sometimes if you're staring at the face of evil and they really want you to think they are not it, they may cooperate 110%. I don't know if we're dealing with a sociopath, a true actor, or if he really is absolutely has nothing to do with this.
With Troy in their crosshairs, detectives look for any evidence connecting him to Sandy's murder.
We searched his car and his house, and there was no gun, no blood, nothing that at that point there really stood out as suspicious.
Detectives confront Troy about his relationship with Sandy, telling him that coworkers painted a picture that was less than perfect.
He was in a state of shock. He felt the relationship was maybe more serious, and she felt like it wasn't, but he didn't know she felt that way yet.
Even though Sandy may have been preparing to leave him, Troy claims it didn't change his feelings for her.
I think I do think he felt very devoted to her. That's the way he exhibited to us.
Even if Sandy's point of view of the relationship was way different than his, Troy was in love with this woman. And everything about her that he talked about was in a very loving and nurturing manner.
Detectives revisit the timeline to confirm Troy's story.
Here, establishing a time frame is important. We know what time she clocked out, what time he calls 911. Those are your two constants. Those are your two things that you can say, okay, this is definite. We have a time card, we've got a 911 call.
Sandy arrived home right about 11:10. That would confirm his story of when he heard the shot and him coming down to the garage and finding Sandy and then making the 911 call.
At this point here, everything that he told us, everything that I saw, everything that I observed about him, it seemed to be consistent with somebody that just lost or just saw the love of his life being, shot to death in a car and her blood everywhere.
Law enforcement eliminated Troy as a suspect as having been involved in the crime at all.
With Troy cleared in Sandy's murder, the investigation hits a roadblock.
We're frustrated. Who else would have had the motivation to have this done? Who would kill her?
She's a mother, trying to put money away and really have a successful life. Then when you start thinking about how she was killed, how she was shot, how many times, we really need to find the bad guy and lock him up.
Then detectives receive an unexpected break. Sandy's boyfriend, Troy, finds a folder belonging to her at the house. He believes it's filled with important information.
Troy gave detectives a folder that proved to be pretty valuable because they were the words of Sandy. So it was kind of words from the grave.
The folder contains Sandy's handwritten notes about her upcoming trial against a man she charged with rape, assault, and forcible confinement.
Sandy was going to be testifying in a courtroom in Tampa, and she was going to be testifying against a man by the name of Timothy Humphrey for committing the crime of sexual battery and beating her. And that case was scheduled to go to trial shortly after this crime occurred. I believe it was in August, about a month away, that trial was going to take place.
Troy previously told police that Sandy's violent ex-boyfriend was named Tracy Humphrey.
It was in that documentation that we found that out, that his alias was Tracy, but that his given name was Timothy. Now we had his date of birth and all his information. That was the first key to really breaking the case open. Now we can start digging into this a lot more.
So when we got the real name, Timothy, we find out, whoa, this guy's got a problem with women.
Mr. Humphrey had served in prison for 8 years. If I had $1 for every woman he was violent on, I'd be a rich man today. I mean, he was always violent.
Then investigators learn more about Tracy's horrific ties to Sandy.
It was a year or so earlier. He kidnapped Sandy, held her against her will, and repeatedly sexually abused her over a course of days. She ended up escaping the apartment or wherever it was and was found by a Hillsborough County deputy in the middle of the night, naked and beat up.
Throughout the ordeal, Tracy threatened her life, saying if she reported the attack, he would kill her because he didn't want to go back to prison.
He was looking at prison time for what he had done to her, and there were court dates that had come up very recently for her, and there was more on the horizon.
Even though Sandy was afraid and fearful of Tracy Humphrey, she was willing to come forward and testify in a courtroom and point the finger at the person who had sexually molested her and beat her.
They had a victim that was willing to testify. They had DNA evidence, they have photographs. That was a good, solid case. And for that to go to trial, he was looking at quite a number of years for that. But Sandy was the only witness in that case. And if she wasn't able to testify, the case was going to get dropped or be what's called null prost, which means the state would not prosecute or proceed with the charge. You talk about a motive. That's a whole lot of a motive. So at that point, Tracy or Timothy Humphreys really does become our #1 suspect.
That's a big game changer. Like, he went from who to the top guy on their list.
Detectives have their sights set on Timothy, AKA Tracy Humphrey, for the murder of Sandy Roso.
She was scared to death of Tracy. And now we've got a handwritten note that said, if anything ever happens to me, go find Tracy Humphreys.
Armed with new details about Sandy's potential killer, detectives track him down at a gym in the nearby town of Brandon, where he lives and works.
He was a strong, well-built personal trainer, worked out a lot. That was his job, that was his livelihood. A lot of people referred to him as the Mr. Clean. Tall, 6'2", 210 pounds, bald, wears an earring.
He acted like a domineering type personality where he felt like he was in charge.
Detectives tell Tracy Sandy's been murdered and question him about their relationship.
When he was told it was about the homicide, he acted like he was surprised. The initial impression was that he probably was hiding something about what he knew.
When detectives ask Tracy when he last had contact with Sandy, he shuts down the conversation.
At that time, he, what we call in the business, lawyered up. He said that he had a lawyer, and he'd be more than happy to talk to law enforcement if his lawyer was present, and his lawyer didn't want him to answer any further questions from law enforcement.
As detectives wrap up the conversation, they notice Tracy's wearing a wedding band.
Later, we found out that he had recently gotten married to a lady by the name of Ashley Laney.
Ashley was significantly younger. Not that we would judge that, but yeah, he was in his 30s and she was 19, maybe 20 at the time.
Hoping Tracy's new wife will be more forthcoming with information, detectives travel to their home in Brandon to talk to her.
When they went in to speak to her, she appeared to them to be nervous, but she did indicate that they had gotten married on July 4th. The day they got married was the day before the homicide occurred, and so that was very interesting to us.
Sandy Roso was murdered on July 5th. So that is intriguing because in Florida law, a lot of people believe that if you're married to someone and you're somehow in cahoots over a crime, that the spouse won't have to testify against the other spouse.
Detectives question Ashley about Tracy's whereabouts on July 5th, the night Sandy was killed.
She indicated, of course, that she knew nothing about the crime, knew nothing about Sandra being shot.
The fact that Ashley and Tracy get married the day before this murder, to me, is compelling, and to me, that's a red flag. At that point, anything they say to each other is protected by the covenant of marriage, which immediately makes investigating and then later prosecuting that much more difficult.
When police talk to Ashley, she willingly gives them her alibi for the night Sandy was murdered.
She told the detectives that on the night of the homicide at 11 p.m., they were home together watching a movie, having pizza. And she said that they had a friend named Toby White who had come over and visited them at the house that night.
Then, in the middle of being interviewed by police, Ashley receives a phone call from her lawyer.
Tracy was very quick to have a conversation with what we believe was his attorney and have her tell Ashley that she did not have to cooperate. In fact, the detectives could hear the voice on the phone telling her exactly what to say to the detectives. So it was very, very suspicious.
Then another surprising interruption.
Much to everyone's chagrin, Tracy showed up, and it was very clear that he was trying to get her to shut up and not talk.
He appeared to the detectives to be angry, frustrated just in his demeanor, through his body language and the look on his face.
That sort of got some gears turning in the detectives' heads that maybe there was a conspiracy to cover up what had happened with Sandy Roso, and perhaps was connected to the homicide.
Even though Ashley is no longer talking, the detectives have gained an important new lead.
Ashley and Tracy Humphrey's alibi for the night of Sandy Rose's murder was pizza.
So, we went to the pizza restaurant, found the driver, found the ticket for it.
The pizza was ordered using Tracy's cell phone on July 5th at 10:49 p.m. and delivered 15 minutes later.
The driver says that, yeah, I remember this guy. Gave me a $20 tip for a $12 pizza. Oh yeah, I remember, guy, bald, big guy, yeah, no doubt.
Other than just pizza, he got his alibi delivered to law enforcement.
With Tracy's alibi placing him in Brandon, 40 minutes from the crime scene, detectives determine he can't be the killer.
That had to take the wind out of the sails of the detectives a little bit, because they were like, oh, we thought it was him. It fit.
It's always disappointing to have a setback like this one involving the alibi that ends up being firmed up. But at the same time, you need to be able to rebound and consider all possible options. In this case, what else is going on involving Ashley? And is she then the weak link that police need to be focusing on?
When detectives look into Ashley's background, they find an incident that piques their interest.
She'd been a pretty good student. She'd been a pretty good kid. She didn't have a criminal history, and she didn't have any problems. But we found out that she had reported her car as being stolen, and her car had shown up in a street in Tampa and had been put on fire. Law enforcement had got a call from a fire investigator with the State Fire Marshal's Service, who found it very bizarre that the car had been found torched.
It's an arson. It's not hard to tell when a car's been burnt up with arson. There's usually quite a bit of evidence left behind that indicates that it was an accelerant used. And in this case, it was quite a bit.
Police look into the arson and learn that the same day that her car was found on fire, Ashley visited a firing range in the Tampa area.
Ashley Humphrey, we found, had been at a firing range. She had been there with Timothy Humphrey, and she had been learning to shoot a .22 caliber type of weapon. That was important information because we knew the type of gun that was utilized to kill Sandy was a .22 caliber.
Now dots start getting connected.
To learn more about Ashley and how she might be involved in Sandy's murder, detectives talk with her family.
What was really interesting was when they met with Mom's boyfriend, he says that he loaned Ashley a handgun, which happened to be the same caliber as the type used in the homicide, a .22 caliber. And he'd been asking for her to give the weapon back, and she hadn't yet returned it. We felt strong that we were on the right track. But you have to be careful in any investigation, but particularly homicides, that you don't get thrown off.
Then, Ashley's mother provides detectives with an even more shocking piece of information.
We were told in an interview with Ashley's mom that Ashley had told her that Sandy had been killed, and Sandy was shot 8 times. Now that information was very important to law enforcement because no media had indicated 8 shots. That was never told to anyone, so that was an information that only law enforcement knew about and the shooter would have known about.
You know, as we start putting the case together, it's obvious that Ashley's involved, but there would be no reason for her to want Sandra dead, but for the case against Tracy.
Detectives then uncover crucial information that confirms they're working in the right direction.
So we got the phone records from Timothy Humphrey. We got the phone records from Ashley Humphrey. And we were able to determine that Timothy Humphrey's phone during the time of the crime was bouncing off a phone tower right near his Brandon residence.
While the cell phone records confirm that Tracy is where he said he was, the same can't be said for Ashley.
The cell phone records blew apart the alibi of her being at home all night.
Ashley's phone was being utilized outside the Green Iguana at about 4:30.
Her cell phone is telling them that she was right there. Not only that, but she was active on the cell phone. She called many times from the parking lot. And who was she calling? Tracy.
Then at about 10:45, that cell phone started to move once Sandy started to go home over the bridge into Pinellas County and bouncing off towers right outside of Sandy's house.
There she is, going closer to Pinellas Park, ping, ping, ping. And then when she gets to the house, ping again.
I think we got her.
Tracy Humphrey's wife, Ashley, is now the prime suspect in the murder of Sandy Roso. But detectives don't believe she acted alone.
Phone records pointed to the fact that Tracy Humphrey was involved. Tracy Humphrey had the motive. He had the desire. He had the will. He was the one that wanted her dead.
I think one question we have in these sorts of cases where there's a male and a female co-conspirator is that what role did Tracy play? What role did Ashley play? Did one influence the other?
Looking for more evidence, detectives turn to Toby White, the friend visiting the Humphreys at their home the night Sandy Roso was killed.
Toby White was an upstanding citizen. She didn't have any criminal history. We brought her in. I asked her questions, put her under oath. She had been a client of Mr. Humphrey's. Mr. Humphrey had turned her life around pretty much in her eyes, her health, her weight, and she felt beholding to Mr. Humphrey.
Police asked Toby where she was the night of July 5th, and she confirms Tracy's story, saying she was at the Humphreys' house from 9:30 p.m. until midnight.
So initially, Toby gives a statement of her being at the house with Ashley and Tracy, and they did have a pizza delivered. When we also have the cell phone records now, I realize that's not possible. Ashley was not at the house at the time.
We told her, basically, we didn't believe what she told us.
Lying under oath or on a sworn statement is perjury, a federal crime, and Toby could go to jail.
She would be facing criminal charges for perjury for lying, so she did recant and tell the truth as to what had occurred. Toby White's news story was that she did not see Ashley that evening, and she did not see Timothy Humphrey that evening, and she gave that false alibi because Mr. Humphrey had requested her to do so.
In hindsight, she realized that Tracy and Ashley were lying to her about what occurred and their involvement in the homicide.
On December 18, 2003, Ashley Humphrey is arrested for the first-degree murder of Sandy Roso. Without enough hard evidence linking Tracy to the crime, investigators charge him instead with a federal firearms violation.
Timothy Humphrey was a convicted felon, and he couldn't own firearms, couldn't use firearms, so he would be unable to go to a firing range and handle the firearm. So we decided to arrest Mr. Humphrey on those charges, and he was held in custody in Hillsborough County. We wanted Mr. Humphrey to be separated from Ashley Humphrey. We wanted Mr. Humphrey not to be able to influence her.
With Ashley now in custody and away from Tracy, detectives are hoping she'll give them more information about the crime, but she won't talk.
When you have a character like Tracy, I don't think you can underestimate the kind of power that he could wield over Ashley. He had a past where he had been violent, and you have to wonder if Ashley did this because she was afraid of him.
Detectives dig deeper into Tracy's past, hoping to find some information that could compel Ashley to talk.
You know, stories upon stories that he told her, they were all fiction.
We found out that Tracy was bisexual.
Tracy had been in a relationship with another man, And Ashley knew nothing about those type of things. And she began to see that perhaps her whole relationship, the marriage and everything else, was all built on lies.
Of course, you're sitting in jail. You have to be wondering, have I been manipulated? And then all of a sudden, you learn that this guy who you're taking the fall for, that you could go to prison for the rest of your life for, has been cheating on you. So that was the final straw.
Stunned after realizing Tracy is not who he said he was, Ashley confesses to Sandy's murder and tells detectives where the murder weapon is buried.
We found the gun, which wasn't far from where I believe her mother lived. That's northeastern Hillsborough County.
Once Ashley starts talking, she reveals key information.
From day one, Tracy convinced Ashley that he loved her, and if they were to spend their life together, his problems with Sandy would need to go away, or else he was going to go to prison because he was being falsely accused, he said.
Ashley also admits she tried to kill Sandy once before.
The first attempt was several weeks earlier. Ashley's goal at that point there was to shoot Sandy as she left the bar. Ashley was zeroing in on Sandy, and she pulls the trigger, and it realizes that the bullet went through her mirror on the car. Well, that's going to be evidence. So Ashley and Tracy, in order to make the evidence disappear, had the car taken to a vacant lot, where they set it on fire.
As more and more evidence reveals Tracy's connection to the crime, police now feel confident they have enough to charge him for murder.
She was his firearm. Tracy pointed Ashley in the direction of his problem, which was Sandy, and she pulled the trigger. We wanted Tracy Humphrey. He was the person behind this crime. But for Tracy Humphrey, Sandy would be alive today. But for Tracy Humphrey, Ashley would have never done this crime.
The power dynamic in Ashley and Tracy's relationship underscores something called the Svengali defense. And this is a term in reference to the literary character Svengali, who's able to hypnotize and put sort of younger, naive women under his spell. And in this case, we have that exact scenario. Someone who, on their own, would never have committed this crime and was essentially duped into committing this crime by a very manipulative, overpowering, and unduly influential predator.
From Ashley's full confession, investigators are able to piece together Sandy Roso's final 24 hours.
It took a lot to put this case together. Every little thing is a small piece of a very large puzzle.
On July 5th, the day of the murder, Sandy starts her shift at 2:30 p.m. As she works the bar, Ashley drives to the Green Iguana at 4:37 p.m. and lays in wait for Sandy in the parking lot.
She had the .22 revolver at this time, the gun that she had borrowed from her stepfather. Tracy was directing her during that period of time. There was a substantial number of phone calls between the two.
Ashley had waited outside the bar until Sandy was done with work.
Sandy pulls out of the parking lot at 10:45 p.m.
And Ashley follows Sandy home.
Sandy gets home at 11:10 p.m. and pulls her car into the garage. Ashley enters right behind her.
Ashley looked into the window, driver's side window, saw Sandy, and then began to fire. Sandy was trapped. She couldn't get out of the car. She had put up her feet against the window, backing up towards the other side of the passenger side. Ashley continued to shoot and emptied the firearm, shooting her 8 times.
Tracy had told her, make sure that you look in her eyes and you can see that she's dead. And indeed, that's what she did.
After she kills Sandy in cold blood, the first call Ashley makes is to Tracy.
She said, "It's done. Now can I have my pizza?"
I mean, seriously, she orders a pizza. She just whacks a girl, pumps 8 rounds into a girl, and wants a pizza. Really? With extra cheese. He had told her that it's too late, I already ordered the pizza. Psycho.
In exchange for her cooperation, Ashley makes a plea deal, 25 years in prison for her testimony against Tracy Humphrey.
We would have loved to have prosecuted Tracy without giving Ashley a deal. Everybody has asked me, what do you think of her getting 25 years? Be honest with you, she should be life imprisonment.
A jury finds Tracy guilty of murder and sentences him to life without parole.
Tracy Humphrey was a controlling and violent person who thought he could get away with murder. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison, and he'll die in prison. And that's what I think all the family members and everyone wanted.
The part that stays with me is the bravery shown by Sandy Roso and the chance that she took to see that Tracy Humphrey was prosecuted, knowing that it perhaps would put her at risk, but that she didn't want to see other women victimized like she had been. One thing that I think is really important to remember about this case is Sandy Roso died a hero. And in many ways, I feel, very inspired by that. In some ways, I feel very sad.
There was a woman, a beautiful woman, who was a mother, who was taken from her kid by a monster. And my heart breaks for her family. My heart breaks for her daughter.
This wasn't a random event. This was a targeted assassination.
A brutal killing.
There was a large amount of blood.
Numerous bullet wounds to his torso and head.
He was probably dead before he hit the floor.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
I was concerned about her description of the shooter being very cliche-ish, almost like a TV movie.
He's a con man. He goes by different names. So red flags are popping up all over the place.
Risky business deals with shady operators. He inevitably got himself, in plain English, in over his head.
The truth will be revealed.
What this came down to was greed. Every one of them was convinced that these two were somehow involved.
I've been a homicide detective for a long time, and oftentimes you just try to find the lie.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Spokane, Washington, an idyllic town nestled in the lush green mountains of the Pacific Northwest.
Spokane is a city of approximately 300,000 people. It's surrounded by mountains and farm country, beautiful with a river running right through the middle of town. It is a great place to raise a family and make a life.
We don't have a lot of crime. We aren't like the big cities where we're going out on homicides every night.
But on a quiet December night, the peace of this town is shattered by gunshots.
911, what's your emergency?
Somebody shot my husband. Oh God, he's going to find me.
At 7:03 p.m., Alberta Carile called 911 reporting that someone had just shot her husband, Doug. Alberta, when she called in, it was right after she made it to a closet, locked herself in, and was hiding. And she called immediately. She had her phone with her. So we knew that this had happened within a minute or two of the call.
Officers arrived on scene. Medics came in and immediately began working on him. They pronounced him dead at 7:18 in the evening.
The victim is Doug Carlisle, a 63-year-old businessman, devoted husband, and father of 6.
Douglas, he was a family man. He'd been married to his wife, Alberta, for 42 years. This was the love of her life. And she knew everything that he did. They were always together. I got the impression that this had broken her. They had grown children, very religious family. From all outward appearances, a completely normal person. He wasn't a criminal, he wasn't causing trouble.
He had his own excavation business in Washington and had expanded that business to include the oil trucking business and was attempting to get into the oil drilling business.
Within minutes of the 911 call, homicide detectives are on the scene.
It was a very affluent neighborhood, and this was one of the larger houses in the neighborhood. I was surprised when I was told the address of where the homicide had occurred, because typically we might go 20 or 30 years without having a homicide in those type of neighborhoods in Spokane.
Tasked with investigating the murder of Doug Carlisle are veteran homicide detectives Mark Burnbridge and Brian Sesnick.
When I first entered the home, there was Christmas stuff all over. There was actually Christmas music playing over the stereo the entire time I was processing the crime scene. So it was decorated and they were obviously ready for the holidays. The deceased, Mr. Carlisle, was lying on his back, his arms out to the side. One round had gone in his mouth.
Doug had numerous bullet wounds to his torso and head.
There was a large amount of blood. It was obvious that the wounds had been fatal almost immediately. He was probably dead before he hit the floor.
Detectives begin processing the crime scene, looking for clues.
Initially, there wasn't a lot of evidence. I found 7 shell casings. Douglas Carlisle was shot 7 times. He was hit 7 times. 5 of the bullets exited him, so I found 5 bullets in the house. 2 more were recovered at the autopsy.
The .45 caliber handgun had been fired at Mr. Carlisle. The subject had emptied the handgun. He had almost no chance to survive those wounds for any period of time. This was a directed attack, and they fired it to make sure he was dead.
To track down the killer, detectives must now focus on the last 24 hours of Doug Carlisle's life, beginning with the moment he arrived home at 6:55 p.m.
Alberta told me that she and Doug had gone to church that evening and had just arrived home from church. She removed their hidden key, which she used to enter the house. She put the key back in position, walked through the kitchen to a short hallway which leads to the upstairs. She was just getting to the 2nd floor when she heard voices downstairs. She heard 2 males talking in the kitchen, and she knew one of them was Doug, and she just assumed that one of them was one of her 4 sons. And so she came back downstairs to see who was at the house. She came to the bottom of the stairs and stepped to the entryway to the kitchen, and she could see Doug to her left, standing there with his hands in front of him, telling somebody, "You don't have to do this." She looked to her right, and near the kitchen table was what she described as a large male dressed all in black with a black stocking mask on with a hole in it. She could see the subject's eyes and nose and part of their mouth, and that they were holding a large handgun. Alberta said that they also had something on their chest and back, like a backpack or a shoulder holster, and that she turned around and started running. As she was running up the stairs, she heard a lot of gunshots. She didn't know the number, and that she ran upstairs and hid in one of the closets on the 2nd floor. Alberta had her cell phone with her and called 911 from a closet she was hiding in and directed police to their location.
Detectives theorize that Doug's murder could have been a burglary gone wrong.
I examined all the doors, all the windows, took photographs. There was a spare key to the house that Alberta talked about. I found that it was still in the same location it had been. So there was nothing to indicate that anyone had broken into the house at all.
I could find no sign that anything had been stolen or disturbed in the residence.
Douglas Carile still had his wallet. He had cash on him, so it wasn't a robbery. I contacted a canine officer, and he showed me the path that his dog had tracked. Basically, it showed that the suspect had fled the back door of the residence, through some shrubs, over a small fence, and through the neighbor's backyard. It was cool out, but not frozen. There was some water in the neighbor's backyard, and you could see footprints in the mud.
A canine unit serves a very valuable purpose at any homicide scene when you have either property or a person that needs to be tracked from that scene. It's sort of the most versatile animal you can imagine. So they have speed and strength, but also the olfactory or the sense of smell that will lead them to items far more effectively and more quickly than a person just looking around.
Just beyond the neighbor's backyard was a field where we located a glove. It was a tan-colored welding glove. Normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but there was some dew on the ground and leaves had fallen, and this appeared to be sitting on top of everything and was dry. So right away we thought this may have been dropped by our suspect as he fled the scene. It was strange enough that there was no way we were going to leave it.
At a minimum, I was hoping to get a DNA sample from the glove that went to the shooter or someone that was at the scene who has been arrested before so that I can identify them by name. Our canine was able to track the suspect past a school. We were later able to get the video from the external cameras on that school, and we could see a grainy figure running down the street just a minute or so after the shooting, leading off into the darkness toward the hidden trail. This camera was not a low-light camera, and so the footage just shows a grainy image of this individual running by. You can't identify him or tell race in any way. After looking at the getaway route, taking into account the hedges, the hidden gate, and the kind of hidden trail that the shooter took to get away from the scene, I told Detective Sesnick that I believed this was a directed attack, specifically targeting Doug Carile, and I was very concerned.
This wasn't a random event. This was a targeted assassination.
Detectives now consider whether this could have been an inside job.
Family members or people you know kill you more often than a random, unknown person. And so I had to eliminate the family first.
When you have a murder, the first person you're going to look at is the spouse. And in this case, we had a spouse who was not only at the murder scene, but claimed to have seen the suspect. But the suspect didn't go after her. So that drew a lot of red flags for me. I was thinking, is this someone who's trying to pull something over my eyes? Or is she really the loving wife?
Alberta provided a fairly detailed description of the shooter's clothing and the mask and some kind of gear that they had on their chest and back. I was concerned about her description of the shooter being very cliche-ish, almost like a TV movie, and it concerned me that it was being made up.
A story that is too detailed is inherently suspicious. Even if she didn't pull the trigger herself, could she have either hired or convinced someone to do her dirty work for her?
In the brutal murder of 63-year-old business and family man, Doug Carile, suspicion is swirling around his wife, Alberta.
My first interview with Alberta Carile occurred at approximately 8:30 in the evening to 9 o'clock in the evening. The shooting had occurred around 6:30.
Alberta Carile, she is different. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that when you're talking with her, there's a lot of religion that comes out. She would occasionally break down crying, and she'd want to pray and things like that. She's very emotional. And that comes across like she's faking it.
So Alberta's reaction in her interview to revert to prayer and sort of these soliloquies and speaking to herself and to God is obviously suspicious and piques the curiosity of investigators. This could mean one of two things. This is a stress response where she's seeking some kind of solace through prayer, or it's a convenient tactic of avoidance and deflection.
As a homicide detective, I've interviewed a lot of people who have had loved ones die from a murder. I've seen the whole gamut of emotion from that, from very stoic, almost non-emotion to hysterical crying. I try not to read a lot into that, but some of the things that Alberta said and some of her actions concerned me greatly. She didn't care about us processing the scene or getting evidence. Saying goodbye to Doug was more important to her than us catching the killer.
Detectives question potential motives that Alberta would have to want her husband dead.
She began talking about their finances and that a lot of what I had seen was just for show. They didn't have $40 in the bank. They didn't have any life insurance. They didn't have medical insurance. I'd had a chance to go through his phone. There wasn't another woman on the side. She didn't have anyone on the side. Basically, every text message and call was, "I love you," back and forth between them. And so once I ruled out that there was a financial incentive for her to be involved, I really believed her when she talked about how in love they were and how things were going between them.
Still grasping for a lead, detectives press Alberta to recall any details of the day of the murder that stand out as unusual.
Alberta started telling me that she thought she had seen a van earlier in the night up in the neighborhood.
One of the neighbors had called 911 a short time before the shooting, talking about a suspicious white van. About 5:45 in the afternoon, she had come home and noticed a white van parked in front of her house. It was in front of her driveway, and she immediately became concerned, thinking maybe someone had broken into her house. So instead of pulling into her home, she had driven around the block and noticed someone sitting in the driver's seat of the van. When this person noticed her watching, they drove off. A short time later, she looked out her window and the van was back, again parked in front of her house. So she called 911 to report a suspicious vehicle.
Was the mysterious white van connected to Doug's murder? Looking for answers, police canvassed the Carlisle's neighborhood.
One of the homes had an external video system, and we actually had videotape footage of this suspicious van about 2 hours prior to the murder, driving through the neighborhood slowly. The van was unique in several ways in that it was an aftermarket extended van, and one of my detectives spent almost 2 weeks trying to identify specifically the make and model of that van. And in the state of Washington, we can run an all vehicles request. And so we requested all the vehicles in Spokane County and surrounding counties that match that van, and we came up with a list of 75.
Though detectives believe they may have images of the getaway vehicle, they're no closer to knowing the identity of the killer.
While I was talking with Alberta, obviously the big question in my mind is who would want your husband dead? And I asked her point blank, who are possible suspects? You've seen the person who shot him, who else could be involved in this? And the only name that she ever mentioned was James Henrikson.
Alberta told me that Doug was very afraid of James, who was one of his business partners, and that he had told her that if something happens to me, James did it.
An investor and project developer in the burgeoning oil sector, Doug Carlisle had partnered with James Henrikson in a venture to extract oil in North Dakota.
James was a businessman in North Dakota. He owned a trucking company hauling water and oil out on the oil leases of North Dakota.
There's a lot of similarities between James and Doug. They both liked people to believe that they were rich. They both drove nice vehicles, had nice houses, liked to show it off, liked to pretend that they had a lot of money. And the fact is, neither of them did. Both were living well beyond their means.
Detectives reach out to the Carlisle children, hoping they can shed more light on the relationship between Doug and James.
Every one of them was convinced that James was somehow involved in this murder, and that it had to do with the fact that their dad and James Henrikson were not getting along, and their business was going south.
Doug's eldest son reveals that the animosity between Doug and James had reached a fevered pitch in the days prior to his murder.
Doug and James Henrikson got into a verbal argument about the finances of the company. James Henrikson was demanding his investment back. It was a significant sum of money, over $400,000 they were arguing about, and Doug Carlisle was refusing to pay him back that money. He was concerned enough for their father's well-being that they gave him a handgun that belonged to them so he could carry it for his safety. It is not uncommon for people that are potentially going to lose large sums of money based on either fraud, theft, or just bad business to resort to murder, either to recover their money or just to get even or pay the person back for costing them their money. In my experience, I've seen people kill people over $50. So hundreds of thousands of dollars is certainly something that someone might kill somebody over.
As the cliche goes, follow the money.
Detectives are zeroing in on a new suspect in the murder of family man Doug Carlisle, his business partner, James Henrikson.
So early on, every family member is saying James Henrikson is involved in this. I just started Googling James Henrikson, and one of the first things that popped up was this ripoff report. He's a con man, he goes by different names. So red flags are popping up all over the place. And so, yeah, with his criminal history and everything that we knew about James at that point, that's when we decided we've got to try and talk to him.
I needed to find out his relationship with Doug Carlisle and to see if anything that the Carlisle family members had told me was potentially true. On the night of Doug's murder, after I had completed interviewing Alberta and her sons, they had provided to me contact information for James Henrikson to include his address and cell phone number. I contacted police radio and arranged for them to ping James Henrikson's cell phone so I could locate where that cell phone was prior to me trying to contact him. After about 20 minutes, I received a phone call from police radio who told me that that phone was being identified as being back in Watford, North Dakota. I contacted James Henrikson at home and spoke to him on the phone. I identified who I was and told him I was calling because Doug Carlisle had been murdered. James Henrikson told me he was aware that Doug had been murdered because he had received texts from several people that he and Doug had in common as friends who were telling him that Doug had been murdered.
He denied having anything to do with the murder.
James Henrikson was guarded in his disclosures of information to me about Doug Carlisle. I was asking him about how his business was doing, and he became angry and denied that there were any problems between he and Doug Carlisle, and said it was Doug Carlisle who lied to people and didn't pay his bills. I've been a homicide detective for a long time, and oftentimes you just try to find the lie that helps lead you down the correct path. And in this case, I either had the Carlisle family that was lying or I had James Henrikson that was lying, and now I had to find evidence to bolster which side was telling the truth. While I was speaking with James on the phone, I wasn't comfortable that he was actually in North Dakota. In this day and age with cell phones, you can forward another cell phone to another cell phone or to a hard line at some residence. So he could have been in Spokane talking to me on a phone that was actually pinging off of a cell tower in North Dakota, and I wouldn't know that.
Cell phones are a really interesting investigative tool. The use of tower pings can essentially leave a trail of breadcrumbs confirming where a person has been or has gone. At the same time, a very calculating suspect could put a phone in a car, leave a phone on a subway, or send their phone with somebody else in order to lead investigators into a completely different area. In essence, a phone can be used to fabricate an alibi.
I later completed search warrants to get complete phone information from his phone, because if you get the actual background information, it will show whether that phone was being forwarded or not, or the actual physical location of that phone. And I was able to determine that it was not forwarded and was actually in North Dakota, 1,000 miles away from Doug's murder. That told me that he was not the murderer.
At that point, we didn't have any concrete evidence. We didn't have anything linking him to the scene.
Unable to put James at the crime scene, detectives ask him who might be angry enough to want Doug dead.
He told me that over the years, Doug, in his contracting business, had been sued a lot of times and had done a lot of shady deals, and there might be a lot of people that were mad at him that might be willing to hurt him.
Mr. Carlisle had 31 liens against him. So there were a lot of people that were upset with him and that would have a reason to murder him.
Detectives dig deeper into Doug's business dealings and discover a desperate man hell-bent on success.
Doug borrowed $150,000 from his son Shane. Doug was promising investors 100% return on their money in 90 days or 6 months, depending on who the investor was, which was ridiculous.
Every dime that he had been invested in the business, and they were not bringing any money in. The business was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. There were IOUs outstanding. They'd taken loans from people up to $400,000 and promised repayment. Those had come past due, so people were upset wanting their money back. He was in dire financial straits.
He had contacted a middleman in the Middle East who was reportedly involved in finding investors for oil companies. This individual charged Mr. Carlisle $90,000 for the right to apply for an investment loan. This was pure fraud, and this individual had no intent of conducting any true business with Mr. Carlisle. So Mr. Carlisle lost everybody's money again and didn't further this business.
Risky business deals with shady operators. Doug got himself, in plain English, in over his head.
I was going to have to expand the pool of possible suspects to everybody that was involved in lawsuits against him.
That leaves a very long list of potential suspects with very viable motives. Money is more than just dollars and cents. Money has a high degree of emotional attachment for people. It's tied to everything from self-esteem to status to identity. And when you begin tampering with that, people will, not surprisingly, respond emotionally, including through murder.
In the face of so many suspects with the motive to want Doug Carlisle dead, detectives reach out to the media looking for new leads.
I had put out a request in the media for persons that knew Doug Carlisle or James Henrikson to contact us if they'd had business dealings with them. Out of the blue, about a week after Doug's murder, an individual by the name of Robert DeLeo contacted me at the police station and said that he'd had business dealings with both James Henrikson and Doug Carlisle and was willing to speak with me.
Robert DeLeo is a very smooth-talking guy, but he's a gang member. He'd been involved in a murder. He is involved in large quantities of drugs, and he'd been to prisons numerous times. He denied having anything to do with the murder. He denied that James had anything to do with the murder, but he felt that he needed to come in and let us know his relationship.
Suspicious of DeLeo's motive for coming forward, investigators question him about his whereabouts when Doug Carlisle was killed.
He told us he was in North Dakota at the time of the murder. We checked phone records, we checked GPS records, and we confirmed he was in North Dakota, which is what his girlfriend told us.
Mr. DeLeo was insistent he knew nothing about the murders, and in fact, he took a polygraph the next day. And Mr. DeLeo passed that polygraph.
Despite DeLeo's alibi and polygraph, something just doesn't sit right with detectives.
I thought it was very odd that Mr. DeLeo came forward just to provide information that he knew Doug Carile or James Henrikson.
Psychologically speaking, I think there might be a number of reasons why somebody would want to insert themselves into an investigation. One reason might be, I want to get close to the investigation. I want to control it. I want to know what's going on.
We often see them show up, for instance, in volunteer search parties where a body hasn't been found. And they want to keep abreast of what's going on so that they can stay a step or two ahead.
Also times, people when they have a criminal history are sometimes impulsive. They don't necessarily have the best judgment, and sometimes they make decisions that are ill-advisable. Sometimes they do this because they're arrogant.
After Mr. DeLeo left my interview room, I began working on a search warrant to include his cell phone, who they had been calling and texting, to try to create some kind of a connection between Mr. DeLeo, Mr. Henrikson, and anybody that might be involved in this murder.
Investigators then make a shocking discovery: that James Henrikson shared a similar criminal past with Robert DeLeo.
Robert DeLeo was James Henrikson's right-hand man. They had worked out in the same gym together, and then a couple months later ended up in jail together, ended up being cellmates. While sitting in jail, Henrikson told Robert DeLeo about his business ventures and his dreams of striking it rich in North Dakota, and told him, when you get out of jail, get a hold of me, I got a job for you.
But what was that job? Looking for answers, investigators do a deep dive into James Henrikson's partnership with Doug Carile. They discover the business was in desperate need of a bailout from an angel investor.
Doug had developed this dream of being an oil man and owning an oil lease and oil wells without really understanding the full financial impact of what that meant. And he was trying to find partners to buy this oil lease for $2.1 million. Doug did not have that kind of money.
Luckily, Doug and James knew a contractor named Larry Tormazov with connections to big money.
Mr. Tormazov was personal friends with a gentleman in Moses Lake who was involved in the contracting business and who was very wealthy. Mr. Tormazov was then contacted by James Henrikson, where they discussed the possibility of this wealthy individual becoming involved in the oil lease. James Henrikson stood to make a lot of money if they could move the oil lease and the drilling of the well forward. And they were desperately running out of time to make that happen, or they were going to lose everything. And so he needed this wealthy individual to help fund this project.
There was just one problem.
Mr. Tormazov said that he told James Henrikson, under no uncertain terms would this person get involved as long as Doug Carile was involved, because of his previous dealings with him. Mr. Tormazov told me that this made James Henrikson very angry.
Turns out, the only thing standing between James Henrikson and millions of dollars is Doug Carile.
Money is always a motivation for murder. I mean, when the stakes get higher, sometimes the danger factor increases.
Money, they say, is the root of all evil. That may be a bit of an overstatement, but is it a common denominator in a majority of murders? Unfortunately, yes. When you have a trail of bad debts and damaged business relationships, greed is going to push to the top in Doug's case.
What investigators learn next cracks the case wide open.
Doug found an investor who lived in Texas, who had a lot of money, who was willing to invest in this land. He'd done the research, he knew that there was a lot of money in it. Doug had convinced this person that really they didn't need James, but he needed to be bought out because they were partners. And he'd agreed to do that. They were set to meet the following day in order to work out the finances to buy James out and to actually begin working on drilling oil wells.
Turns out Doug was murdered just days before he was set to cut James out of the business. If James had caught wind of the plan, he'd have even more motive to want Doug dead.
We're trying to piece everything together. DeLeo had been in North Dakota since at least Thanksgiving. He hadn't been back to Spokane. We knew Henrikson had been in North Dakota consistently even longer than that. Neither of them had been to town recently. which again creates issues when these are your two suspects and you know that they haven't been anywhere near the murder.
This is now the second viable suspect that police have had to strike off their list. So now they are losing momentum. They've spun their wheels for a while now with these people. Where do you go next?
Police finally get a breakthrough when DNA is pulled from the glove found at the crime scene.
25 days after the murder, I received a phone call from the State Patrol Crime Lab and was told that they had a hit to an individual by the name of Tim Suko.
When we first hear the name Timothy Suko, I got very excited, but it was hampered a little bit by we'd never heard that name before. And it came off a glove that I found in a field. What if it's just a coincidence? What if Timothy Suko is the next door neighbor? We didn't know who it was at that point.
I immediately began researching Timothy Suko and found that he was a multi-time convicted felon of violent crimes, first-degree robberies, gun crimes, and that he lived in the Spokane area. I started looking for Timothy Suko's connection to anybody associated with Doug Carile because he didn't know Doug and didn't have a motive for killing him.
Knowing there's a small crime world in Spokane, detectives start piecing together a potential conspiracy to commit murder. Could Timothy Suko have been hired to kill Doug Carile?
Robert DeLeo was also a true bad guy in Spokane. He comes across as very gregarious and friendly, but he's dangerous. And I wondered, his contacts in Spokane, did they have something to do with Doug's murder, and what was his real involvement with James Henrikson? I believed we had a true hitman case.
Investigators now theorize James Henrikson masterminded the murder of Doug Carile by hiring Robert DeLeo to contract out the job to local thug, Timothy Suko.
Murder-for-hire schemes are fortunately fairly rare. Most people act impulsively and do their own dirty work. Whoever's concocted this murderous scheme simply doesn't want to get their hands dirty or wants to leave themselves an alibi. So you're essentially looking for an absolute stranger who committed the murder for some kind of payoff. The key to finding them in that case is to find the person who did have the motive and ideally linking them to the killer.
So the first thing we do is try and connect Timothy Suko to James Henrikson and Robert DeLeo, but he doesn't connect to any of them.
Detectives place Timothy Suko on 24-hour undercover surveillance.
We began following Timothy Suko around, trying to find out everything we can about him. We find out that he works for an asbestos removal company in the Spokane Valley. As we start looking at the company, we see some vans parked out front. One of them, which looks exactly like the van that had been described to us at the crime scene.
I checked our list of 75 vehicles that we received from the state of Washington as potential owners of those suspect vehicles, and that asbestos removal company was listed as an owner of one of those matching vans. I had undercover detectives go out and view that van, and that van had some very unique identifying marks on it, which exactly matched the van at the crime scene. I was very certain that this was the vehicle used in the murder of Doug Carile.
While the evidence connecting Timothy Suko to the crime scene is strong, it's not enough to charge him with Doug Carlile's murder.
We began diving into cell phone records. We began looking at towers. Timothy Suko had left his cell phone at home because he didn't want to be tracked. He knew a little bit about how police worked. His driver got bored and turned his phone back on and was playing on the phone while he was waiting. So we were able to place the van and the driver at the scene for about 2 hours beforehand.
With the evidence now stacked against him, Timothy Suko is arrested for the murder of Doug Carile.
Not only do we have DNA linking this person there, we find no other reason for him to be in that area, and now we have our van that was used as the getaway van. So we start putting everything together and we bring him in.
On the night I arrested Mr. Suko, he was in denial, refused to speak with me, and in fact he fell asleep on the interview room table.
Back in basic homicide school, you learn that when someone's done a serious crime, they're constantly looking over their shoulder. They have trouble sleeping. They're waiting for the police to show up knocking at their door. So when you arrest someone and you tell them they're under arrest and you know they did it, all that pressure's off now. And it's not uncommon for suspects to fall asleep. And so we knew we had our guy.
I got a search warrant to access Tim's phone, and in that phone was James Henrikson's name. It says James, North Dakota, and it was James's phone number attached to it. So at that point, I knew that at least in some way, Tim Suko knew James Henrikson directly.
About an hour after the murder, Timothy Suko sent a text message to Robert DeLeo saying, "Tell the boss to watch the news." This was obviously letting Henrikson know that he had carried out the murder.
At this point in the investigation, I've got an overwhelming amount of evidence that's pointing toward Mr. DeLeo and Mr. Henrikson's involvement in Mr. Carlisle's murder.
Detectives haul Robert DeLeo into the station for questioning.
I told Mr. DeLeo, you know the game. First to the table gets the best deal. And he was trying to beat Mr. Suko to the table to provide information. Ultimately, DeLeo admitted to brokering the murder of Doug Carlisle for James Henrikson.
With the confession that James Henrikson was responsible for the hit on Doug Carlisle, detectives are able to piece together his final 24 hours.
Timothy Suko had been up at the house for a couple hours, waiting for the Carlisles to return home. They'd been at a church function that began at about 5 o'clock. They drove home, parked their car probably about 6:55 in the evening.
They entered the residence. Alberta started up the stairs. When she heard voices in the house, so she came back downstairs to see who was there. She actually saw the shooter and saw him with a gun.
At 7:02, Timothy Suko shot Doug Carlisle 7 times and ran away. At 7:03 p.m., Alberta Carlisle called 911, reporting that someone had just shot her husband.
Medics pronounced Doug dead at 7:18 in the evening.
Timothy Suko then disposed of the murder weapon.
Timothy Suko had driven out to the Spokane Valley, out to a bridge, and tossed the murder weapon into the river.
My biggest takeaway in this case is that Doug is not unlike a lot of investors who has this sort of modest demeanor or veneer, and he likes to take risks in financial games. And when they begin losing money, the stakes are even higher than I think Doug and a lot of these people initially guessed.
Robert DeLeo pleads guilty to conspiracy and solicitation to commit murder and is sentenced to 22 years in prison.
Mr. DeLeo is a sociopath who has no guilt feelings about anything he's done.
Timothy Suko pleads guilty to murder and receives a sentence of 30 years.
He's gonna be like 80 years old if he ever sees daylight again. So basically it's a death sentence he got, so I think his sentence was fair, provided the information he gave and the help he gave to the case to get the actual person that I believe is responsible.
James Henrikson is found guilty of murder for hire and sentenced to life in prison.
James Henrikson, to me, very much presents like a classic quintessential psychopath. He starts out as a con man, wheeling and dealing, moving on to bigger scams, which eventually ends up into being a mastermind of a murder.
This was a case where we took down some real bad people. These weren't people that just lost their temper and killed someone. These were pre-planned murders. What this came down to was greed. James saw a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and he was willing to kill anyone who got between him and that money. And Doug Carlisle was going to buy him out, and he wasn't going to get that money, so he had him killed. It was all about money, it was all about greed.
This case was the most complicated case that I've ever worked on. It meant a lot to the Carile family that I was able to bring this case to resolution. I received phone calls from every son from Alberta thanking me. They're just good people who are appreciative that their dad got justice.
Doug Carile was a truly innocent victim in this case, and the people involved are sitting in prison where they deserve to be.